Hello, word nerds! Happy Sunday. It is August the 16th, and we are so glad that you're here. We are going to be talking about all things social media today. Do you need social media? Where's the hip places to be if you're a writer? Our feelings on it. So I just wanted to kick it off with, where is your favorite social media platform to be? Kelly.
In terms of actually being social, Twitter is like the only one I actually interact with anyone on ever. And then the one I enjoy in my heart is TikTok.
Aaron?
The only one I like is, the main one I like is obviously YouTube. So mostly I'm a social recluse, so mostly just hanging out with the word nerds and chatting with people in the comments here. So
Rachel?
I would also say YouTube, but Instagram has a lot of my screen time. It's where a lot of people that I know are. It's where a lot of pretty book photos are. And then also because I'm sort of in another media industry, a lot of people are on there too. So lots of photos going on all over the place.
Yeah. We've got Evelyn's here as well now.
Emma, hello.
Emma. We're talking about where our favorite social media platforms are. My favorite, I don't know. I kind of hate all of it lately. Obviously, I enjoy being live on YouTube a lot, and I love all of the people doing word sprints. That's the thing that I actively enjoy and the thing that I'm most likely to interact with people on. I probably lurk the most on Twitter because I really like the idea of being active on it, but I don't understand how to insert myself into the conversations on Twitter. What about you, Emma?
Yeah, I definitely feel the exact same way about Twitter. I lurk a lot, but I don't tweet much. And I definitely don't engage in conversations because I've definitely seen people on there who insert themselves into conversations a lot, and it seems awkward, and I'm like, I don't want to be that person.
I feel I insert myself into conversations on Twitter if I actually have something to say.
Yeah.
And not just cool.
Yeah. But I like Instagram a lot. I still don't use it a ton for writing stuff, but I enjoy it. It's a fun one to scroll through and to post on. It doesn't feel nearly as pressure filled as Twitter does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel on Twitter, not just with important conversations that are happening, but there's all these people on there who seem really cool, who I want to be friends with, and I don't know how to reply and be same.
Yeah.
like that, but so instead I just aggressively like people's things, and I hope that eventually they'll start liking mine too, and then I'll see my in.
Making friends as an adult is so hard. Making friends on the internet is both so easy and so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're you seem like a cool person. Do you want to be friends?
Yeah. And I think too, especially back when the Word Nerds channel first started, there was this idea that social media was absolutely necessary. If you're going to be a writer, you have to get on Twitter. Do you guys think that's still the case? Is there any social media that you would consider a must if you want to be a successful writer?
A website, if you count that as social media. I think that's necessary.
Yeah, I definitely think of that as more of a marketing tool, but definitely a website.
Mm-hmm. It's I would recommend being on one social media platform, having a writer presence on one social media platform, just because in case people want to look you up and find out what's going on, other than just because websites are kind of static. So just wanting, readers just want to see pictures of the pretty park you went to or something, sometimes that can be just kind of nice to get a glimpse into people's lives. So, having one thing is good, but still not necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say still not necessarily, because if people want a glimpse into your life, you can have a newsletter be part of your website and give people a look that way. Mm-hmm. So if you are someone who is I'm going to be 100% offline, just at least have a website.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
some way for people to contact you in some way.
Yeah.
I find as somebody who works with some publishers and such, Instagram and Twitter are kind of the two big ones that I find that I'm like, it's very strange if you don't have one of those. Because a lot of the events I go to will like live tweet things, or they'll give you the bloggers hashtags to use. And so you want to be able to tag the author or tag the presenter. And same thing on Instagram. Like there's so many big accounts that do, reviews of this book. And if you tag the author in it, of course, it looks better and it'll reach more people. So it's kind of, I guess, also for marketing, but I feel like those are the two that like I always look for people on those ones first.
When I was running the Festival of Reading for the Words, which was like for 44 days, we featured a different new release every day. And on that day, I had different social media posts ready to go, recommending that book to For the Words' audience. And I'd always try to tag the author, but in the ones that I couldn't, it wasn't going to be as effective in terms of like actually bringing people over to the author. Like it would show them the post, but it doesn't encourage them to interact at all. It's just kind of here, but there's no way to learn more. So having them there was definitely helpful, but some of them weren't super active or anything, which was fine. I still used them.
Yeah, I guess it brings up the question, like how much of yourself do you have to put on the internet in the name of having a good marketing plan? When I first started writing seriously, it seemed very much like you have to be there, you have to be accessible. You have to like make a brand out of your personality. And sometimes I still feel that pressure a little bit of just like, well, I need to be there so people can talk to me. But it's like,
I think you have to be
write books, and that's fine too. I like being on social media, so it's fine. But
I think you have to be somewhere, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be Twitter. It doesn't have to be Instagram. You're inevitably going to have sites that you really don't like click with as a person, like formats that don't work for you, and then ones that you enjoy. And I think like, I know a lot of people have said this before, but like it shows if you're really not enjoying something. For me, like I have distanced myself from Twitter. I'm like, we had a conversation about this the other day during writing group, I think, where I was like, I can't do Twitter anymore because it just sucks up all my time and I lose hours and hours of writing time. It's just not good for me. Also, like the doom scrolling, right? It's like, oh my God, what's happening now in the States? And I'm like, I can still look at news, but I can't look at news on Twitter. So I have like set up and I've seen more and more authors do this now where they just set up like a spot on Twitter. So like, yes, if you look up my name, here is my account, but just FYI, I'm not really on here except for news and updates. And here I'm more active on this other site. So you still have a space if people are looking to tag you, like Rachel was talking about. You're still there, but you're not there. And I've seen more and more authors do that.
Having news, like a spot for news and updates on Twitter, at least, I think could be really helpful. And because, like I said, like websites are a lot of times pretty static. Like you forget to update those. Like it's understandable.
It's harder to update too.
Yeah.
I would rather update something on Twitter.
Yeah. And like newsletters are great for people who are subscribed and getting those. But like if you just like read a book by an author and you're like, hey, I want to go see what they have coming up soon, like you may not want to like subscribe to their newsletter to find that out. And like a Twitter is a good spot to just like go there and see like, oh, they have a book coming out in 3 weeks. They've been tweeting about it.
Jennifer had a good point asking about Goodreads as a media platform for authors, because that's the first place I go for that information. If I like something, if I'm curious what's coming, like I'm not looking for live interaction from the author, but that's where I want news to be. I want to know how many books are in a series, next release date, all of that stuff. Goodreads for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely important to be like have a spot. I don't think as an author you should necessarily be like parking it on Goodreads and interacting with the people reviewing your books, but you should definitely be on there if you have books out.
Claim your books and have a profile. Yeah, that's literally all you need.
Yeah, because I usually like go there looking for the links to the other places because they'll tell me what the author's actively on and all of that stuff. Sometimes they're linked up with blogs, so you can see that latest news there.
It's kind of about being accessible, but it's not necessarily about being available. Like you want to have a place that people can look at your stuff and be like, even if it's just updates or what have you, and be like, oh, this person exists online and you can see their work, but it's not necessarily
and
about,
they're
like,
working on another
constant-
book or whatever.
Yeah, it's not necessarily constantly like tweeting 10 hours a day and responding to every single person, like building your brand as a personality, like just having an account even and being
That's
like, my new book comes out next week, done.
That's the thing, because like when I first started out in publishing, I was like, oh, I have to have a newsletter. I have to be active on Twitter. I have to post 3 times a day. And at this point, I've got to a point where I am like an old crotchety person, and I don't want to be on Twitter, and I don't want to be on Tumblr and whatever else. And I hate newsletters. I don't know. What are the kids using?
Go off, Erin. We know that you want to bash
I'm not on
newsletters. Go off.
TikTok. I hate newsletters. So I was like, I quit all of it. And because if you talk to anyone, they're like, newsletter is vital. And I'm like, maybe it is, but I hate it with a fire of 1,000 burning suns, and I quit. So
Yeah, that's a huge thing to consider, I feel like, is like newsletters can be really helpful, not just in, they care enough to give you their email, which also means they're more likely to care enough to click and buy your book. But like, if you absolutely hate it, then like, why? It's going to take you longer to do it, which takes time away from your writing, and
yeah. And it's a constant cycle of guilt. Like, oh, I'm supposed to do a newsletter. Oh, I keep putting it off, and it takes forever, and I don't know what to say in it. And I feel like my snarky grumpiness comes across in it. And it's not good.
Yeah. I feel like it's not necessarily even just with authors, but even just people online, like social media people, like YouTube stars or whatever. Like if there's all these updates constantly, but like, oh, there was a frog in my backyard, and here's a picture of it. And so like, it's just eventually you're like, I don't care about I don't care. Like, I want to know about your book. I want to know about your next video. I want to know like how this, like a cool extra scene, but I don't need to know all this like minute detail. And it's like at that point you're like, where, like, I don't care about this. Why am I listening to this every week or whatever for a newsletter? So it's like to figure out kind of like what to put out there.
Yeah, and I think that brings up the importance of deciding like which of your social medias are going to be geared towards writing versus which social medias are you going to keep for yourself, like private accounts, personal accounts where you just like put stuff out for your family and friends, because like my mom does want to know if I saw a frog and thought it was cool. My great aunt is really invested in that. No one else wants to know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that made a big difference on Twitter for me was making a second account that had nothing to do with books. Like, I'm not getting rid of my books one. That is like, it's probably where I scroll the most, but I made one once I started learning like coding and tech stuff to interact with that community and not have it, like, I just didn't feel like it was going to mesh well, because I wanted to like interact with beginner hashtags and just like jump into random conversations, and having that be with my author persona just felt way too high pressure. So it's been nice just getting away from the book side of Twitter and having more fun with it and not worrying about being a professional in there. I get to just be a beginner and a person, which is nice.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, like once you start thinking about like branding yourself as it doesn't even necessarily have to be as a creator or as a writer, like even just like as a person. Like, it's very strange to be like, oh, I want to learn this new thing, but it doesn't go with my image, like what do I do, kind of thing. So it's really, yeah, like the 2 accounts or whatever, or you can just expand, what have you. But yeah,
Well,
sometimes it can be kind of
with how
odd
much
making a switch.
I enjoy TikTok, but I haven't really gotten involved in it because I never know what my niche is. I can never just pick one thing, because I know I don't want to just like talk about writing stuff, because I don't feel like I'm doing enough of that this year. But I feel like unless I pick one thing, what's even the point? So
You should totally do like writer mentor TikToks. Come on, that'd be great. Hey, BookTube, like Book Talk is popping. It's great. I love it.
I know, but I've read 12 books this year and written no words. So.
You have so many books. Just use those.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like a huge lesson I've been trying to learn this year is the idea of like not taking myself so seriously on social media, even the social media that I'm hoping will be where people who like my books eventually come and find me. Just this idea of like, it's just Twitter. Like, it's not the end of the world if you like say, haha, this is so funny, I'm going through this too, and like no one likes it or something, like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Mhm. I think something really important to take into account is like how many, like if you're a writer and you're like feeling all this pressure to be on multiple platforms, you have to think about, well, how many books would I actually sell on my social media platforms? And the answer is surprisingly little. It's not really for that function. Usually people find your books in some way and then they discover you. I mean, obviously there are outliers. You've got Alexa Dunn on YouTube who has created this huge channel for herself. And she even says, like, I have seen my sales go up since my channel started getting more popular. And I fully believe that. I do believe there are some instances where you have built yourself from the ground up and you're selling books that way. But I don't think if I get active on Twitter and I tweet about the frog in my backyard, that it's going to move titles off the shelves. It's not. I'm better at buying or writing
I
more.
will note that in terms of social media being for selling books, that is what newsletters is for. That is people that want to buy your books. Not saying you have to do it, but that is what that medium is for.
That's true. And that's
And
what people-
websites too, you know, it's here's links to where you can buy my books, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
To
it's
me,
also
things
that kind of like thing that's considered rude if you go into someone else's comments and be like, "Hey, buy my book." You know, everyone's kind of like, "Don't do that."
Do
Or
it,
even
don't do it.
yeah, no, or even on like on YouTube, it's a huge faux pas to like leave in the comments of a video like, "Love this, come check out my video." Like it's not really, it's still looked down upon. And it's especially if you're just spamming someone over and over again, being like, "Hey, you should read my book. Hey, you should read my book," or like just constantly tweeting out about it. It's like it's gonna drive people away. And I know that's not the intention, but it will.
Yeah. Well, it's like soft selling versus hard selling. What you're talking about is hard selling, where you're like, buy my book, buy my book. Like all social media is a form of soft selling, if you will. Like
Yeah.
people can find you and they're like, so I will say like a caveat to what I was saying earlier. Like I found Maureen Johnson on Twitter and I was like, oh my God, she's really funny. I think I followed her for about 5 years before I actually bought a book. Right. But it was because I had found her on social media. So I mean, it's not that it doesn't move books. It's just that it's a lot smaller than you would think.
Well,
But again, like
Matthias
if I
had
look on
I was going to go to a question. You go.
Okay. Well, thinking about, again, it might be the platform as well. Because if I see on Instagram, like because I follow so many book-related accounts, a lot of these are very large book-related accounts. I get a lot of free stuff, and so of course they're constantly just talking about advanced copies of things that are coming out. And if I see something with a pretty cover on someone's beautiful Bookstagram, I'm gonna want to go and buy it. So in that way, it definitely helps push stuff.
Social media has gotten me to buy books, but it's not usually from the author tweeting about them. I mean, there have been times, like Erin's example, where like someone has like tweeted something really insightful or really great, and then I find out they have a book.
Is great.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, let me like look into their book. But a lot of times it's other people talking about someone's book.
Yeah,
on social
like
media.
stuff that moves titles is like the what the heck is it called? Storygram, the Storygram tours.
Mm-hmm.
My publisher did that for Witches of Ash and Ruin. And I really did see a spike in people going to my website and like posting books. And that's just because like of the way that's set up on Instagram. It is posting your cover on various like different big Instagrammers. People just see your cover over and over. And then when they go into a bookstore, they're like, oh, I recognize this cover. I liked that cover when I saw it on such and such's book post, So that like repeatedly seeing a pretty title, a pretty cover can definitely move the book. But yeah, it's almost never the author being like, buy my book, because I'm just like, follow if that happens.
Yeah.
This all ties in really well with Matthias's question, which is if social media isn't for selling books, then what is the purpose of it for writers? I know for me, it's not so much about connecting with people that I hope will buy my books someday. It's about connecting with people who are going through similar things and people who are where I would ideally like to be in my career someday. The people who are gonna like read your book early and recommend it to people, like other writers pretty much is what I use Twitter and Instagram for and stuff.
It can
Networking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
networking, and it can also get you opportunities. Even the Word Nerds got invited to the NaNoWriMo channel. Like, that's really huge. I have been emailed and said, hey, can you speak at this festival? We saw your vlog, and that was really cool. So none of those are directly, selling books off shelves, but when I then go and speak at this conference, wherever, I hopefully am moving titles off the shelf. So, I mean, it does indirectly lead to sales and opportunities. So,
Yeah, I think Jocelyn earlier asked, would people consider YouTube as social media? And particularly, like, would writers or readers consider it social media for that? And I'm thinking, like, absolutely. Because with all the people doing write-ins or all the booktubers talking about, my favorites of the month. And I mean, if I like somebody and they're like, hey, this book slaps, I'm probably going to be like, cool, going to add that to my, Goodreads and going to go buy that. But yeah, it's not too often. I guess some writers like Alexa Dawn and like Tamara Woods, and like a bunch of other people that we've talked with who do have books, like that might help them sell, but mostly it's just for just writing in general. And if you happen to also be an author, like, that's cool.
Yeah.
With social media, because I believe that comment also mentioned things like podcasting and stuff. There's definitely degrees of separation from like you, the person putting out the media that people are consuming. And so things like YouTube and podcasting, you have more control to be like, I'm not interested in having like this intense back and forth, which is definitely a positive. A negative is that, all social media, but especially like podcasting and starting YouTube channels, it's really hard to build up an audience. It takes a long time. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because like, obviously I love being on YouTube, but it definitely takes a really, really long time to find a community that you're like, we did it, gang. Like, way to go.
There's a level of distance there that, like, I don't think of it not as social media, but it's mostly we're talking at people. Like, because we do the live chats and we're interacting, it's a little different, but mostly like making a podcast episode and posting that on YouTube or whatever, where you're not interacting with people. Like, you have to take it a step further for it to actually be social media where you're interacting in the comments and building those relationships. But it is still just a little different.
It would still count, though, if you're looking at social media as a way of like getting yourself out there as an author, of appealing to editors and agents. Because if you have like even a semi-popular podcast or YouTube channel, like, absolutely put that in the bio of your query, like that type of thing. It does definitely make you more appealing if you have a platform like that. But like we were saying, it's a tremendous amount of work. Like, make sure it's something you genuinely enjoy. Like, I remember I did hire a social media manager, and she was like, go find something and like make it your thing. And I was like, I really like YouTube. I'm going to film a bunch more. I'm like reread Twilight and like film myself doing it. And I think I made about 3 videos, and I'm like, holy crap, this is a tremendous amount of work. And I don't care about any of it, because like, I like the Word Nerds because of the Word Nerds, because I get to hang out with you guys. I do not like doing it on my own. So it's hugely different. And I think I ran out of steam in like 2 weeks. So make sure you enjoy it if it's something as big as like a podcast or a YouTube channel or something like that.
And like those kind of things, and like kind of what Megan was saying before of not taking yourself as seriously and whatnot, but with like YouTube, it feels like you need to add more value than just like being social. It's not like making vlogs and stuff. The odds of finding a whole audience based on that, like, you need to be talking about something you know things about and really adding to the conversation and giving far more than you're getting. So it's higher pressure, and you need to kind of get into something with a plan. It's less of a throw this at the wall and hope it makes me famous.
It's a commitment for sure. Yeah.
I think if you've never been on a social media platform and you're wondering like, oh, maybe I should, just to, get a taste of it, I think Twitter is a really great, easy, low stakes place to start. It's where all of the major conversations are happening about writing and publishing. It's where like there's hashtags that make it really easy to find other young writers, not like young age, but like young in career. Pitch Wars is coming up, so people are going to be really active on there. They're going to be looking for writing friends. Yeah, and it's also just not a terrible idea generally if you're like, oh well, maybe I want to do Twitter someday, maybe I want to do YouTube. It's not a terrible idea to grab the handles that you think you would like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I switched everything on my accounts over to Megan Books recently. So like my first name and then Books, because I figured it would be easier to spell for people. And it turns out that 2 of the social medias are taken, the handle is taken by someone who's not a writer.
Tisk tisk.
The same person, and I'm so sad.
Then you have to do the thing that all the YouTubers do, the original Megan Books.
Yeah, I took the Megan Books, and it's like, who are you? You're not the anything.
Yes, you are Megan. You are the Megan Books.
Yeah. So definitely, if you think you're interested in something, it's worth grabbing the handle, even if you don't use it yet. Does anyone else have any different recommendations for people who are like just starting out on building a social media platform?
I don't know. Just try everything and figure out what you like and what you hate.
Yeah, there's more options than ever. So you are going to find something that works for you and that you get invested in. Like, don't force it.
Yeah, like a lot of options. Plus, there's so many tutorials. Maybe is it the right word? Of like how to do it. So like, oh, how do I film a vlog? Well, there's so many things on the internet that show you how. Or like, oh, I want to start an Instagram. Okay, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like it's, you know, you can just do a whole lot of different things and figure out what you'd like best.
We had a question from Jocelyn. Does anyone have a favorite author website? I'm a huge fan of Christine Lynn Herman's website. I think it's amazing. It's like the perfect blend of beautiful and minimalist. For me, I absolutely love it.
I was just on Renee Addier's site, and it's real nice. Oh no, sorry, it was Roshni Chokshi. My bad. I was looking at both of them, but no, I like Roshni Chokshi's website better. Sorry, Renee Addier.
I love any site designed by IC Design.
Yes.
Mine.
Hey.
Mine is pretty awesome, actually. If you go to elatimer.com, IC Designs did that one, and she just does a beautiful job.
Do you guys have any what are your tips for must-haves if you are building up a website? Let's say if you're building up a website for starters as someone who doesn't have any books out, and then we'll move into what you should add if you have books out.
Definitely links to anywhere that you are online. So if you are on any social media, link to that. I know you can embed a feed of your Twitter of what you've been tweeting. Or if you want to blog, do that on your website, but you of course don't have to.
Yeah,
Just a little bio of what you want to write or what you are
Yeah.
writing. I write dark fantasy or I write young adult sci-fi.
It depends on what you want to show people. Like looking at Roshni Chokshi's and it's so visual and beautiful because she has a great Instagram. So lean into your strengths basically because you're letting people get to know you right from that first load. So
A bio and a way to contact you, I think, are probably the two of the most important things.
Maybe some excerpts if you're feeling,
Feeling fancy.
feeling fancy, feeling brash.
Yeah, I redid my site because I did blogging for a long time, and blogging just isn't my favorite medium. And I had been wanting to get rid of a lot of those old posts because I'm very different now than I was 10 years ago. And so I revamped my website, and I was like, I don't have any books for people to buy right now. Let's just have fun with this. And so I ended up putting the Pinterest boards. I embedded those so you can see the aesthetic with a tagline and where I'm at in the writing process. So I've got one that I just completed, and that is up there with aesthetics and Spotify playlists. And then the one that I'm drafting, and it's no one super cares about it, but I really like it. And it makes me happy when I go on there and see oh, that's what I'm working on. For project drafting, the project I'm drafting, I have a little story tools chart that's 62,000 out of 65K goal.
One thing I will say for your website is if you're going to do some type of theme, like Jocelyn says, my website is very pretty. Thank you. I see that's such a good job. But mine is very witchy. Or like, I mean, just magical. And that's pretty much my brand. But when I first did the website, I leaned into heavily on like the one book and then realized as I published another book that had nothing to do with it, oh, I need to change it. So make sure that your website encapsulates your brand rather than one book in particular. That seems like it should be obvious, but I apparently did not get that memo.
That's also advice that we should mention for social media is don't base your social media too much around one book unless it's the only thing you plan on doing. Like don't make your Twitter handle related to like the title of your book because you're going to publish multiple things.
Yeah. Or not,
I guess it works for Rick Riordan.
If you're querying and you haven't, definitely don't do that.
I would also, in that same vein, like if you don't have any books out or anything like that, I wouldn't stress about buying the handle or anything. I'm a big fan of like WordPress as just like getting on there. You can build, it doesn't have to be a blog on WordPress. You can still build a static site there. You can also use things like Wix or Weebly. Both of those are very user friendly with like helping you figure out this is how blocks work, this is where you put things, and just playing around with it because when you don't have any books out, it's really low stakes. So you don't need to be hiring a web designer. You don't need to be
don't hire.
It's
very expensive.
You can find like cute images on websites like Unsplash or like Pixabay.
Free Pick with a K. I use that for work all the time.
So there's a lot of resources out there for if you're wanting to claim that space on the web as yours, but not at a position professionally where you want to be putting a lot of money into it. What are some things that you think are must-haves to add to a website if you do have books out?
Well, the books, obviously.
Link where you can go buy them.
Yeah, and annoyingly, you should have links to all of the different websites you can buy them on, or a link to a list of those places. Let's see. Yeah, I have a contact form now because if you have a email, like a plain email up, often you get added to spam lists.
I've seen a lot of people who do events, either at bookstores or libraries, say like you should have a press kit. So somewhere where you have downloadable versions of like your picture of your face, headshot, like your author headshot, and your book covers, so that they can easily like put them up on like the event page on like a bookstore's website or a library's website. Like you don't want to make them have to do too much work for that sort of thing. Cause like in a lot of ways they're doing you a favor by having you there for an event. So like have the stuff just like there for them to go ahead and get with like synopses of all your books and everything.
You will also like, I mean, obviously not right away, but eventually you might want to do like a Q&A page because you will get asked the same 10 questions over and over and over by readers.
Yeah, for press kits, I think we have a really old video on our channel about press kits, but also gonna second time recommend Christine Lynn Herman's website. It has a really incredible press kit with like all of the things you could possibly want to include.
Looking at our list of things when we were talking about social media, and so which authors' websites do you like? Which authors do you find are doing social media well? Who do you follow and like? Not necessarily who do you want to be like, but whose presence online do you enjoy?
V.E. Schwab.
V.E. Schwab just recently, I don't think she said it, but I think she's left Twitter. She's got an intern doing it.
Oh, okay. You know, I mean, honestly, she can do that. She's like well established enough. She's rich. She can do that.
Adrienne Young does Instagram really, really well. I kind of aspire to be her on social media because she has the same thing that I want to set up with just like, here is my Twitter, go to my Instagram instead. And then she does really beautiful Instagram pictures and has a really good presence on there. So
Mhm.
she's the author of Sky in the Deep.
Mhm. Rick Riordan. I know that's like Uncle Rick. He's just so great. But he really is, like, just the way that he interacts a lot with people. He addresses concerns. He's just very positive overall.
And very patient.
Yes.
She hasn't been as active lately because she had a baby recently, but Susan Dennard, of course, is great on both Twitter and Instagram, especially if you're also a writer and looking for information about writing and revising and everything. So.
I'm a big fan of like anyone who's just a little chaotic but like loves books and art. So like Rosanna Brown and Aidan Thomas.
Aidan Thomas is great.
Herman.
Aidan Thomas is precious. I love them.
Booktuber Cindy.
I'm just
my God, Cindy.
Like who have I liked recently?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Clayton.
Cindy is pure chaos. You have to be in the mood to watch her, otherwise you're like, I can't handle this right now.
Love it.
I think Alexa Dunn is a great example of someone who's using YouTube really to her advantage. But again, I could never do anything like that because I'm like, you're like recording lectures essentially. Like that's so much work. But yeah, she's doing really
well. And it's always tricky because you can do all that work and it won't take off like hers has.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like you have to put out good work for people to be able to want to come to you, but you can't advertise your work, otherwise people will shy away from it. Like it's a very strange
and you can't be the one to
dynamic.
say it's good work. Someone has to find you. Someone else needs to find you and share with other people and say it's good work, which is just kind of
I
think
luck of the draw.
you can advertise your stuff. You just have to be careful about not doing it too much and not doing it in the wrong spaces. Like going into someone else's like Twitter thread and being like, buy my book when they weren't looking for, like it's one thing if they're like, hey, if you have a book that fits this criteria that's coming out, like drop the links or whatever. But going kind of like unsolicited into other people's spaces to try and promote your book can be a problem, or if it's the only thing you do, or if you just constantly do it. But like if somebody, like you definitely, I think, should promote your book still on social media if you have a social media presence. Like if you've got a book coming out in 3 weeks, like let us know that you have a book coming out in 3 weeks and include the links to where people can buy it, but you can do it in a way that isn't spammy. And isn't annoying to people.
I've seen people talking more about marketing specifically, but like an 80-20 rule of like 80% of the time you should be giving to the community and engaging with other people and making it not at all about you. And then that 20% of the time you can be talking about your stuff. Find creative ways to do it, like just buy my book and link isn't going to do it, but it's okay to do both.
We had a question from Jocelyn. Do you see that certain genres or types of writers work better on certain social media sites?
This one doesn't super apply to YA. It's pretty much everything but YA and like children's books. And the one where I feel about it, like Erin does about newsletters, is Facebook. That if you are targeting older readers, especially like, and by older I mean even just like 40 and up, women readers, so pretty much any genre, Facebook is really where you should be. Like that is where they're engaging with content, they're joining writers groups by the thousands. I just hate being there. I don't like it.
I guess that just shows the generational divide, right? Because like you could say, oh, the millennials are on Twitter, so you better be on Twitter. Or all the young people are on TikTok, so you should be advertising your book on TikTok. Because I've seen that, and I'm just kind of like, I guess this is where your audience is now.
I think it's more of a category thing than a genre thing, because I know like I asked my publisher, because I first published with a middle grade and now I'm published with a YA, and I was so used to the YA sphere where everything is like you do a cover reveal and you do a blog hop and you do all this stuff. And when I asked my publisher are we doing all of this? They basically like laughed almost. They're like, that does nothing to move the needle in middle grade. You want librarians and school teachers. And those are the two things that sell your books, and advertising to the parents if you can. But yeah, like a cover reveal on Twitter, not going to do anything. That's what they told me. So that was like a kind of a rude kick in the head to my expectations at the time. But I have found that to be pretty true. Like middle grade, you don't really see a lot of it on social media being out.
I'm like, I don't think there's a couple outliers, of course, but I don't really see any like hardcore adult sci-fi on Twitter. You know, it's like that's where a lot of like the young adult, new adult stuff is. So it probably is genre related, or I guess like demographic.
Because there's a lot of like adult romance writers who are on Twitter, but they tend to use Twitter more like, I feel like Twitter mostly should be used as like a community thing as authors. Like I see a lot of like romance authors having conversations on Twitter, but then they use Facebook groups to connect with their readers.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It is tricky. There's so many options, and some of them are great for some people and don't work for others. I've tried a Facebook group as well, and I ended up like, it's not a bad area to have your readers in, but I just found I was not motivated to go interact with people on Facebook in general. I guess maybe I am no longer in the age range either. I don't know. But I was like, this is not fun. I don't enjoy this format. So, but also I'm a grumpy curmudgeon, like I said. If my books get popular, it will be in spite of my social media, not because of. Who was it? Vanessa, do you think you guys use social media well? And I'm like, no. Not me, anyways.
I feel like we do YouTube well. Yeah. I don't know that I personally put enough or put as much time and thought into how I do my other social media as I do into this channel.
But that's going to be inevitable. If you have one strong area that you really love, you're going to focus on that, and everything else will be a bit by the wayside. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either.
Yeah.
So
I know I go through phases of like, oh, I'm so into Instagram right now. I'm going to make sure I got amazing photos, and I have like 4 to upload. I'm so excited. And then sometimes I'm like, I haven't uploaded to YouTube in like a month and a half. And like, I just don't want to. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, hell yeah, YouTube. Now I'm going to film so many, and I'm so excited. It's like, it just kind of depends.
Yeah, I do think the biggest things to consider when you're trying to determine if you're doing social media well is like, are you doing it consistently? Are you giving back to the community that you are hoping will consume the things that you're putting out into the world? And then I don't know, just like, are you enjoying yourself? Like I like being on YouTube. It's what I do for my day job as well. So like I know a lot about it. I'm able to bring a lot to that because it's something I know a lot about. So like, what are your strengths and how can you apply them to social media in any way that will be useful to your writing career, whether that's through networking or finding readers on Facebook or whatever.
I think like also something I've discovered actually in 2020, funny enough, is that I, as a writer and a creative person, really need a balance. I took an accidental, like I know a lot of people do like the media vacation where they don't touch any media on their phone or laptop or whatever. And I did that accidentally because I had like this really intense week where my agent was like, I need a synopsis, I need a 50-page sample, I need this, and I need it all like immediately. And it was like just 7 days of like really intense writing and nothing else. I like literally just did not have the time. And by the end of like the 6th day, I realized, I'm like, I don't think I've ever been this creative before. And I realized it's because I wasn't like, I have this awful habit of like stopping every hour, every 2 hours to be like, let's scroll through Twitter, let's go on Facebook. And I wasn't doing that. And that made me even more curmudgeonly and even more be like, okay, I just really want to quit all social media, but I know that's not possible. So finding a balance, I think, is vital for, at least for me, creatively. Good God. I cannot word. You guys know what I mean. To be a creative person, I have to find a balance. And I think finding one social media platform and sticking to that and having small time allotted for that and having most of my writing time be my main thing is important for me as a writer.
Yeah, that actually was one of the things we had noted in our show notes. No,
Sure, yeah.
our lesson plan. That too.
Lecture notes
In our notes was all of the different ways to help find balance, because that's definitely really hard when you're doing something creative. So, what do the rest of you also do to try and find balance?
Definitely. Well, I've had like the doom scrolling issues this year. I think everybody has. The balance I'm mostly trying to find is more that I want to engage more. Like my problem is more lurking and just kind of absorbing things, but never really getting involved in anything because I put too much pressure on it, or it's just what am I going to say that matters, any of that. So, and I feel like when I engage and build those relationships, whatever thing it is that I'm doing social media for, like I get more excited about writing when I involve myself in the writing community on Twitter and all of that. But I spend most of my time just looking at other things and seeing what's going on or reading the gossip instead of actually like making friends. But that's really hard to do. So that is the balance I am trying to strike.
Yeah. I have all my notifications turned off on like if I want to see a notification, I have to intentionally go to it. So like my phone's not going to ping and tell me that someone liked my tweet. And that's very helpful. I have a separate email for all my writing stuff versus like day job stuff. And then even like a personal, I have a lot of emails that help separate it out. So it's like if I'm trying to get stuff done for my day job, I can just turn off the notifications on the other emails. Most recently, I, like everyone, have been having an extremely hard time being productive in writing. And I was like 2 chapters away from being done with a draft, but no matter what I did, I could not force myself to sit down without I'll just open Twitter because these words aren't coming anyway. So I went and parked my car in an abandoned parking lot and put my laptop in the front seat where I couldn't see it and sat in the back seat with my Bluetooth keyboard. Just sat alone back there and typed and finished it up. And it was like, well, if I'm going to go on Twitter, I'm going to have to be really intentional about doing it. Like I'm going to have to climb into the front seat to get it. And I'm going to feel ridiculous doing that.
A lot of writers are very, like myself, so I'm not judging, but are very weak-willed people. And I know many, many, many writers who have that app on their phone that like shuts off social media from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or whatever it is that they have. So they literally can't log in if they want to. I know Stephen King has like a big blog post about this or something, or he was tweeting about it a while ago, where he has a rule that if he is stuck, he is not allowed looking at anything other than the blank page. Because there's this, and I do it too, there's this big like inclination to be like, I'm stuck, I can't think of anything else, I'm just going to quickly check Twitter. And then 3 hours later you look up and go, oh, oops. So I started doing that, and it's very helpful.
We had a question from Lottie May. If an author feels uncomfortable using social media outside of having a website, do you think their agent/publisher would be okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would try if I were you. A case of do as I say, not as I do. But attempt to do a newsletter if you can, if you're okay with that, because that is like the number one thing they'll tell you to do. Because you can get your Facebook accidentally deleted, or TikTok stops being a thing, but you will have those newsletter emails forever. See, that's how old I am. I just said TikTok. So TikTok. All the kids are on TikTok these days.
Yeah.
I do think there was a time when people would have told you have to do it, but I think at this point we've all kind of realized it's not going to sell books.
It really like warmed my curmudgeon heart when Tamsin Murr just hit the New York Times list and she has like 0 social media. So vindication.
Yeah, I do think like there is a chance once like an agent most likely won't care at all, like won't bring it up. If you get a book deal or when you get a book deal, there will probably be a publicist who is in charge of a lot of books, but like yours as well, who might suggest you do certain things. And it's not a terrible idea to listen to them. Like that's their jobs. They know that really well, but you don't have to do anything. Like you can be like, I'm not comfortable with that.
I will say, and as much as I absolutely hate to admit this, if you have a platform or not will come up if your manuscript goes to like the editorial board at a publisher, like it's uncomfortable. But they go into like who you are as a writer, sometimes what you look like these things are like open secrets, but yeah, they'll go to your website, and as long as you have that, and if you have a newsletter, I think that's fine. But like definitely if you have a YouTube channel or you are big on Twitter, that is like a huge selling point when they take your manuscript to the acquisitions meeting, you know. So something to think about.
It's
Even as somebody just on
exclusionary though. Go ahead.
What?
Just like being in the book blogging community, it definitely is very helpful when you do have something. Because I do find it slightly annoying when I'm trying to like put a post together and I can't tag somebody, or if I'm like trying to make a post about somebody and they just don't exist. So then you have to get into some like weird hashtags to try and like kind of scope out. But again, yeah, it's not the worst thing. You know, we can deal with it.
Placeholder, you know, you can still tag.
Yeah, exactly.
Twitter, and I might see it, but I'm just not like their spam.
Yeah, and it's something too, like if the reason you aren't comfortable is because you aren't comfortable putting anything personal out there, like you don't have to put anything personal out there. Like you can choose your one thing, whether it's a newsletter, a blog, Twitter, whatever it is, just to have somewhere where you can remind people like, hey, I exist and I have a book that's coming out. Because like websites are great and Goodreads are great, but people have to go search for you to find that. Like I would have to be like, oh, there's this author I like, let me go check again to see if they have a new book coming out because I haven't heard anything. Where like if I follow them on Twitter, when they announce the book, then like it's going to come across my feed and I'm going to be reminded about this author and reminded that there's a book coming out, or if there's a movie deal or there's a giveaway for one of their books, or they're going to be doing an event, like all those sorts of things. You want somewhere where you can remind people without them having to like search for your website or search for you like on Goodreads every single time they want to know what's going on.
It also doesn't have to be personal. Like it doesn't have to be like, here's a picture of me and my kids. Like it could just be a picture
you can put
of
no
like
pictures of yourself. You can
just put just your book. Just tweet, be like, I'm writing something cool today, and like that's it.
Kara Cass, who started out in the Twilight fandom, like she had a really popular like YouTube or blog or something, and like or if you look at literally any of the like big booktubers on YouTube that have now had book deals because they have this massive platform, you don't have to start talking about yourself. You start talking about books, you know, books that you read, and that's still a platform. So you absolutely don't have to talk about yourself if you're a little wary of that.
Yeah. We've mentioned a few times how having a platform can help, but I also want to reiterate that like it's not going to help that much. Thousands of books come out every year and only a handful of them come from people who have big platforms.
But getting repeat customers is pretty difficult. So I'd say that if someone has like read your book, thinks it's really cool, finds you on Twitter, and then you say, I have another book coming out, and you've been tweeting funny things for the whole year, I'm more inclined to be like, oh, I'm going to check that out, instead of just some random person coming across this book and being like, oh, I mean, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And even I would say, even if you haven't been tweeting like great stuff all along, if I've read a book by someone and I really, really liked it, and I want to know in the future when they have more books, whether it's following them on Twitter or subscribing to a newsletter or something, I'm going to know when they like announce that a new book is coming out. And I think that's, you want to at least have something where people can like find out when something is going to happen.
Like when I find an author, I'm like, I want to buy all their books. I look them up, and usually on their website they'll be like, oh, book 2 is coming such and such date. Then I know, as long as there's somewhere I can find you, you're good.
Yeah, for sure. We had
it kind of ties, interestingly, into Penumbra Mind's question of, as indie published authors, do we need to have a more active social media presence than trad published and supported authors? And this is actually, I would say you need less. I find that any of the big, like top 100, not any, but a lot of the big indies aren't big on social media. They don't have a ton of followers on Twitter, but that's where newsletters are super important, because those like readers who are reading 100 books a year and are super used to just flying through them, they're very used to the indie way of newsletters, of like authors telling you when their next book comes out that way. So I would say you don't need social media at all, but you need a newsletter.
Let me look through.
Thank you, our indie publishing mentor.
I'm glad one of us knows a lot about indie pop.
I'm looking through our notes right now to see if we've missed anything. So we haven't talked a lot about this, which is analyzing success. What is worth it and when to quit a piece of social media?
If you hate it, it's always okay to quit.
Even if you're super popular,
Yeah.
you can quit.
I think it's like once you stop getting any, like if you're putting in however much effort, if you feel like you're not getting that back in a meaningful way, then you can quit. Then you can go on hiatus or whatever you want.
If it starts to affect your mental health is often when people back out. Like I know for me, I'm like, Twitter is affecting my mental health and I'm done. I know Kim Chance, I think it was, recently stopped on YouTube, and she is huge on YouTube and very popular. And I think it was a case of, when you get to a certain level of fame, you get trolls, you get haters. And if it starts to affect your mental health, then maybe it's not worth it. So yeah, it's always valid to think about your mental health and your creative output.
Yeah, for sure.
What was the first part of this question besides when can you quit?
Analyzing success. Like, how do you determine if you're doing well on social media? Because we've talked a lot about like a big platform, but like, what is even a big platform that's worth considering keeping?
It's also a really good note is level of interaction, because I get this all the time on Wattpad where people are like, oh my God, you have so many followers. I'm like, okay, yes. But when I put a message out there or something, I'll get maybe 10 people replying, which isn't bad if I had 50 people, but I have 100,000. So the level of interaction is very low over there, and therefore it's not worth pouring tons and tons of time into it. I mean, if I wanted to try to up the level of interaction, that's what I do, but I'm not able to commit the time. So that's always something to think about, like what kind of level of interaction are you getting? Those that's why a lot of authors quit the Facebook pages, because you had to pay to get a certain level of interaction, which is BS, if you ask.
It is super BS.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a lot of this from the angle that we're all a little burnt out on social media. So we're kind of entering a little heavy towards the it's okay to quit. And it's always, of course, it's okay to quit. But social media is also fun and a great way to meet new people and all of that. So if you are enjoying it, that I would say is successful. If you're making lasting connections with people and networking and all of that, learning things about the industry, what books are coming out, what trends are happening, what drama has exploded, all of that kind of stuff. It can be valuable, especially if you don't have those connections out of those other people who are going to tell you of like what's going on and that kind of thing.
I think what Kelly said about like finding something you enjoy is like the if I'm gonna boil it down to like the single most important thing, that would be it. Because like if the word nerds have taken a long time to slowly grow our audience. And if we had been like, it's not happening fast enough and quit, we would never have got to 10,000. But we are enjoying the crap out of ourselves, right? Like, this is really fun for us. And so it really didn't matter how fast we were gaining viewers. We were just enjoying the ride, essentially. And I think that's a huge part of it. It's the same with Twitter. Getting Twitter followers can be incredibly slow, but if you enjoy it, you're going to keep doing it. So
Yeah. I think there also is that kind of idea that when people say, oh, you have to be active on social media, everyone's mind goes to like being a social media influencer, and like you have to post 10 times a day and you have to interact with every single person and you have to be putting these amazing photos up and doing whatever. But it's like, no, not really. You can just tweet whenever you want to, or you can put up a picture once a month, and that's fine if that's all you want to do.
interact with people.
Yeah.
And you can use things to like schedule your posts on Twitter,
Mhm.
things like TweetDeck and stuff. You can like schedule your newsletters so you don't have to write them the night before you want them to go out. Automating social media, particularly when it's not one that you want to be doing a ton of interacting on, is really useful. One of the things we talked about when we were talking about this privately was the idea that like, just because you're quitting a social media doesn't necessarily mean like you have to delete the whole account and back away and now no one can find you on Twitter anymore or whatever. Like, you can have that space held for you as like, this is my spot, but this is where I actually am. Go find me here. And so it's totally fine to adjust your presence on all these different places. It's also fine to delete it if you don't want it at all. There's no right answer, I think.
I'll quickly answer Penumbra Mind's question before we wrap up about finding subscribers for newsletters. It's actually easier in the self-publishing world because it is such a common marketing tool. So, and unfortunately, you have to be on Facebook in order to find these things, which is part of my resentment with Facebook, because there's so many author groups of people doing like newsletter builders where they'll all post a big giveaway together and send each other their subscribers. Like, you have to follow all of these people in order to enter. And so there's so many of those things in author groups on Facebook where you're never really targeting just random people. The other big one is putting links in the back of your book. Like, if you like this, please subscribe. Those are the most valuable ones you can get. But there are other ways to build that subscription slowly and hopefully, because you can always like essentially buy them by doing like a really big giveaway, but you're going to get a lot of people who do not care about your book. They just want the free thing. And you're going to have to spend money in order to send these people emails. So you have to weigh what's actually valuable, but there's lots of opportunities out there.
And having an incentive for subscribing is definitely useful as far as newsletters are concerned. If you're indie publishing, you have a lot more freedom to be like, oh, get my first book in the series free if you sign up for the newsletter. A lot of traditionally published authors will do like, you can get a deleted scene from my book if you subscribe to my newsletter. Like giving them a reason beyond just, oh, well, I kind of like that book. You're like, oh, well, I kind of like that book, and I'd like this one.
Susan Dennard is the only author I'm subscribed to, but there's also a trade-off of, yes, I buy her books, but for the most part, if it's a lot of writers who are on your newsletter because you have great writing advice, they aren't necessarily your audience, so that's tricky as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's talked a lot about that on her website, of how like she had so many followers of her website when Something Strange and Deadly came out because she would talk about writing so much, but then it didn't translate to sales, and then just for no apparent reason, it was not the same way with the Witchlands series. That have been really interesting to read.
She did talk about how for the Witchland series, she did like put an intense amount of money and time like streams and stuff. So that's a different type of social media for her.
Yeah, we've been going for a little over an hour, so we'll probably start wrapping things up. If you have any last minute, like, wait, you didn't talk about this, put that in the discussion section now. Yeah, I think there's definitely no super right way to do social media as a writer, as long as you're doing what you enjoy and not being annoying. Does anyone have any like last minute thoughts about social medias?
Find something you enjoy.
And Megan's advice from earlier about not putting too much pressure on it, like
Mhm.
I think so many of us had when we were growing up, it drilled into our heads that the internet is forever. So it feels like anything you say needs to be valuable, or someone might find it years from now, so it can't be stupid. And that is just not the case. There's so much out there now. As long as you're not saying something horrible. I just
Plus,
hop into the
you can get
conversation.
you can get like browser extensions and Twitter bots that delete your tweets after a year. So like,
Say all the stupid stuff you want. Excellent.
well,
Social media is just it's a tool that's there for you, but it's not the most important thing as a writer. Like what's most important is the writing, is getting stuff out there and being nice to people along the way, making friends. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. Hopefully this was useful in some way, whether you are watching this live or after the fact. Be sure to like and subscribe because we're on social medias.
hey.
We hope you like it and want to be subscribed to us. We are at Word Nerds Vlog pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, I think we're there. We don't use it, but we have a spot. Yeah, so definitely tune in. We'll have videos Tuesday and Thursday, just like normal. And then we will be back next week. What's our topic next week?
I feel like we had something. Like Erin had a good idea. I don't remember what it was. So we'll discuss and let you guys know.
We'll let you know. I cannot remember. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. We will see you all later. Bye.
Bye.